Hi, I'm Kai Cheng Tom, and this is Ask Kai, Quick Tips for the Apocalypse, a series of short videos in which I answer all your questions about how to survive and thrive in the middle of the apocalypse, which, as we all know, is like sort of we're at the end of the middle and we're getting closer to the end. But anyway, let's not think about that too much. I'm a lesbian in my early 20s, and I feel guilty when I hook up with people because I'm not really interested in a long term relationship. And I feel like I'm objectifying people if I hook up with them. So this is amazing. And actually, this is like kind of like a sexual values question. When it comes to values questions, I always like to frame that by saying it's less about the specific value and more about how you enact that value in the world. You know, I might have the value that like, I love promiscuity. Everybody should have a sexy, great time. Actually, that is my value. I'm just going to go ahead and own that. And other people might be like, my value is that sexuality is something precious. And, when I scatter the seeds of it everywhere, then it's not really showing myself or others the respect that I think they deserve. So, we might agree or disagree with either of those two values. But what's really important, and where those two values probably converge if we're holding them up well, is in how we enact them. Are we being kind to ourselves and to others? Are we taking other people's feelings into consideration? Are we harming anyone else? Are we being self-reflective? And, starting from either value, we can use that framework of how am I enacting it in a good way to actually arrive at something pretty similar. So the value here that's being expressed is, I think it's wrong to objectify people. To objectify people sexually is wrong. Where does that come from? Well, it's sort of in the word. When we objectify people sexually, we might sort of turn them into an object. We stop thinking about who they are as people, and we're sort of more in the zone if they're an object for my pleasure. So that's why it might be wrong. But, if we look at that from a different angle, we might say, well, actually, and this comes from psychoanalysis and, Freud, who said a lot of bad things, but he also said some good things too, that everyone actually subjectifies and objectifies others. We also subjectify and objectify ourselves in any relationship. Even with the very best of intentions, we are at some point thinking, how is that other person going to meet my needs? And that person is thinking, how am I going to meet their needs? And the important thing is not to never objectify the other person, but to be able to see them as both subject and object at the same time. Someone who might meet my needs, but also they have needs that are important, and those things don't supersede each other. They are of equal importance. In terms of the real world manifestation, well, I would say if you're engaging, or if one is engaging in casual sex and hookups with people, and that feels bad to you, like it's hurting you, I would say maybe hang on to that, take a break and ask yourself, how is that hurting me? Is it hurting me because it's hurting the other person? Or is it hurting me because it's discordant with my internal value? That's a conflict you have to resolve with yourself, and you might end up saying, well, actually, my sexuality is one where I don't really enjoy sex outside of a relationship, and so I'm not going to do that to kind of protect myself, at least for now. Or you might be saying, I think my behavior is negatively impacting other people because of the feedback I've gotten. And this is where communicating is really important. I hate to get really 90s on you, but really communication is key. You want to be asking the other person, how was that for you? Did you have a good time? Did you enjoy yourself, et cetera, et cetera? And this can be really hard, I think, for folks who are looking specifically for hookups or short-term relationships, because there's a bit of a fear there sometimes. I'm going to say that part of becoming a mature and morally developed person is getting over the fear. We have to be able to ground in ourselves, and sometimes we need to talk to, friends, counselors, therapists, watch advice column people talk in order to get this, support we need. We need to sort of step over the threshold and say, yes, I am nervous that if I ask someone how, good a time they had, they might say bad, but I'm going to ask them anyway, because then that gives you the information you need to know. They might say, I had an amazing time. See you whenever, and then maybe you could continue your hookup. Or they might say, I didn't really have a good time, and then you'll know that you need to change something. Or they might say, I had an amazing time, let's get married, and then you have to take another step over another threshold and say, I'm glad you had a great time. I had a great time too. I am not offering a long-term relationship. So that brings us to the second part of the question, which I love even more, which is it cruel to propose a casual relationship with someone whom you know has more serious feelings? This is an even stickier question, and the stickier the better. I love these things because it's important to get them out in the open. Is it cruel? So again, I think we want to come back to not so much the value, like is it always wrong 100%, versus how is it affecting the people in front of me. Some folks are going to be really great at setting out their own boundaries, going to be able to set out their own needs. Some folks are really, really sexually independent, and they're going to be able to say, I would have preferred a longer term relationship, but short-term sex also sounds fun, and that'll be okay for them. You have to be able to trust that when they say that they mean it and they can handle themselves. And if maybe they were wrong, they can also deal with it. On your end, you really want to be thinking about, am I deceiving or misleading the other person in some way? Like, am I saying, yeah, short-term relationship, but then really what they're hearing is, I'll think about it, and if you're good enough, then I'll extend the relationship into something longer term. Because, a lot of people who say that they're okay with a shorter term relationship are maybe somewhat secretly thinking, I'll use this short time to convince you that you want to be in a long-term partnership with me. That was like my whole early 20s, just convincing other people to be in long-term relationships with me is not good. It's a bad situation, usually, because you're probably not going to be convinced. So you really want to be listening for that. You might want to actually say it. Like, you might want to say, I hear you saying yes to the shorter term or casual thing, but are you sure you're not really hoping for something longer term? Because I know I can't offer that. And when you say it with that much confidence, that usually empowers the other person to say, you might be right. It's not your job as the person who is being honest and upfront about needing a short-term relationship to read the other person's mind and make sure for them that they're not making a decision that they will regret later. However, you of course will be affected if they are not really able to make a good decision for themselves. And so to save yourself heartache, you might really want to develop your empathy and evaluation skills. Really listen to what the other person is saying. And again, those of us who are, kind of more inclined towards shorter term or casual things often forget the listening piece because it's a bit scary to listen to someone when you're hearing hope in their voice and you're like, no, your hope cuts me like a knife. But you want to be listening for the hope. Because if you hear them hoping for something that you can't offer, that allows you to say, I am not really feeling that this is something that we can do together. Or, I am thinking that maybe you want something more than I can offer, and so I'm going to step back. And you want to be firm about that because that will save you some really difficult conversations and some heartbreak later on in the future. So what's my answer in a nutshell? My answer is no, it's not always cruel, but you have to be sure that the other person is really able to take care of themselves and know what they want. And if you're not sure, well, it's not your job to read their mind, but you're probably going to get yourself into more trouble than if you were sure. So, you might actually just want to cut things off there in a gentle and respectful way. So that's another episode of Ask Kai, Quick Tips for the Apocalypse. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Stay safe, wash your hands. And, if you're a politician and it's your job to make sure that the population is safe based on your guidelines about a global pandemic, you might want to do things that are not directly contradictory, like where you're like, everyone stay at home and see nobody you love, but also go to your job at the mall and open all the schools. Like, you might just saying, if you're a politician and that's your job, just maybe send us a clearer message or something. Okay, bye.